students staying connected, families in Colorado just got a big boost to make sure remote learning goes smoothly. And the debate over ethnic insensitivity is front and center in northern Colorado today. We're taking a 360 look with multiple points of view on the effort to remove Native American school mascots. Plus, a huge win for the Denver Nuggets after a very hard-fought and emotional round one of the playoffs. Denver7 News starts now.
Thanks for joining us here at 11. I'm Brian Sanders. We do have a big announcement this morning that will help so many families learning from home this school year. A recent survey from the Department of Education found 65,000 Colorado students lack access to high-speed internet. 2/3 of those students are Latino. And today, Governor Polis announced a partnership with T-Mobile and other providers to expand broadband access to Colorado students.
Without broadband, without access, students are unable to participate in remote learning. They're often unable to do their homework if they're in school in person. And they're more likely to disengage and more likely to fall behind.
So as part of a legal settlement with the state of Colorado, T-Mobile will provide free hotspots to 34,000 low-income households. And the State Board of Education will invest an additional $2 million to ensure broadband access. Coronavirus cases in Colorado are ranging from 150 to 450 per day, but state officials are now worried about what will happen over Labor Day weekend. They don't want a repeat of what happened around July 4th.
I know after the 4th of July weekend, 2 weeks later, our cases were up. So I can look at Labor Day and say, if people again are gathering in social situations, not wearing masks, being less careful, we're going to have cases go up around the first day of fall.
So here's where we stand as of the last update from the Colorado Department of Public Health. The state added 351 new cases yesterday. That brings our total to nearly 58,000 since the pandemic began. The positivity rate is ticking up on our 7-day average, nearing 3%. The state health department says we need to keep it under 5%. We can already see the effect the pandemic has had on housing stability here in Colorado. The homeless encampments around the metro seem to have only gotten bigger as more families struggle to pay rent. The city of Denver is planning a new multi-million-dollar shelter in the Park Hill neighborhood, but Denver7's Micah Smith shows us advocates for the homeless say that isn't the solution the city thinks it is.
This announcement from the city of Denver of a $20 million new shelter in Park Hill hasn't done much to excite advocates for those experiencing homelessness. They say many refuse to go to already existing shelters because of curfews that interfere with work and lack of privacy. The Centers for Disease Control has actually recommended that cities allow homeless encampments to remain for the time being because it fears shutting them down will spread occupants and possibly COVID-19 throughout the city and break contact with service providers. I asked the city of Denver why these cleanups and encampments shutdowns continue if the CDC recommends against it. The Department of Public Health says conditions in encampments were really bad this summer, and they found litter, human waste, and pests on certain sites, which required sanitation and intervention. The department also says CDC guidance should, quote, not be considered in a vacuum, nor should it eclipse all other environmental and public health considerations. Instead, the city has been advocating for more shelters, and again, recently announced that $20 million lease. Homeless advocacy groups like Colorado Coalition for the Homeless say this isn't a permanent solution, but it may be useful in the winter months.
Obviously, housing is the solution to homelessness, but housing takes longer than 5 to 6 months to bring online.
There's no specific timeline for when this shelter will open up, but homeless advocates again say many will continue to choose encampments over shelters. Reporting in Park Hill, Micah Smith, Denver7.
The motel rooms the city of Aurora was using to create emergency quarantine spaces for the city's homeless population are no longer in use. The city says the demand has dropped off from its peak back in June and July. At the time, fewer than 40 people used the quarantine spaces. The city used about $286,000 from CARES Act funding to pay for the rooms over June and July. August fees are expected to be a fraction of that cost. About 50,000 people across the country should finally get their federal stimulus checks this month. The IRS withheld checks from people who owed back child support, but it mistakenly affected the people who were owed that child support. So the IRS is fixing that mistake now, more than 4 months later. Those checks should go out by mid-month, and you can track your payment through the IRS website. In another mistake, a new report reveals thousands of paycheck protection loans meant for small businesses were wrongly awarded to some companies. According to the report from the House Oversight Committee, the incorrect loans went out to businesses that already received PPP funding or others who simply didn't qualify for the program. The report shows more than $4 billion were wrongfully distributed. A big relief for election officials who expected the pandemic to affect the number of volunteers willing to work the polls on Election Day. Coloradans are stepping up to fill the gap left by older volunteers who typically serve on Election Day. Hundreds of people from all age groups are now signing up to serve as election judges in every county. The County of Denver saw 550 new applications yesterday, adding to a pool of more than 4,000 potential volunteers. Tonight, the Thompson School Board in northern Colorado will vote to retire Native American mascots in Loveland. That decision will impact both Loveland High School, which changed its logo to the one you see here, and Bill Reed Middle School, which are the Warriors. Denver7's Eric Lufer kicks off a 360 look at the debate over these decades-old mascots.
There are certainly multiple perspectives on this highly contentious story. Where the vote is pretty much inevitable, the decision is going to be made tonight by Thompson School District. But a lot of people obviously don't like it. You can see this sign on the school grounds of Loveland High School, Forever Indian. Tonight's vote is the culmination of a discussion this city's been having about the mascot for almost 2 decades. There have been recent changes like removing the chief's face from the logo and using the red L. Several years back, members of the Sioux tribe were brought in to help craft a more respectful image, but years later, you can tell it seems like it's just not enough, and the school board says Loveland High will be the Indians no more, shocking some alumni who say this is not the time for a decision like this.
We're in the middle of a pandemic, and this school district doesn't even have enough Chromebooks to give out to all the students. Why do we have to make the change now?
So what's next? The district says it could take up to a year to dissolve all the logos, and it could cost up to $100,000. I'm Eric Lufer, Denver7.
And we have more perspectives from groups rallying online to support both the removal or retention of the mascots. One Change.org petition calls for the removal of the mascot, saying Native Americans are not mascots or costumes. Their culture is not school pride. Another Change.org petition calls for saving the mascot, arguing it stands for bravery, loyalty, patriotism, and dauntless pride. As for the tribal perspective, the National Congress of American Indians says rather than honoring Native peoples, these caricatures and stereotypes are harmful, perpetuate negative stereotypes of America's First Peoples, and contribute to a disregard for the personhood of Native peoples. We want to hear from you ahead of tonight's school board decision. Should the mascots stay or go? And do you have a different angle on this debate? Let us know by emailing 360@thedenverchannel.com. The Denver Nuggets are moving on in the NBA playoffs, fighting back from a 3-1 deficit in the series against the Utah Jazz, all culminating with Game 7 last night, knocking off the Jazz by just 2 points. Denver7 Sports Director Lionel Bienvenu has the highlights and the emotional reaction to the win.
Game 7 between the Jazz and the Nuggets. Remember, Jamal Murray was the headliner for most of this series. But Nikola Jokic came back in Game 7 and stole the spotlight right in the nick of time. Joker hit the game-winning shot as the Nuggets came back to win the last 3 games of this series and move on to round 2. Fourth quarter, low-scoring game unlike the first 6. Jazz took the lead. Rudy Gobert on the bucket, 68-65. Then Jamal Murray coming off a 50-point game, the drive and score. Nuggets had a 4-point lead. Murray had 17. Then under 30 to go, Nikola Jokic on Gobert. This is grit, determination. And he got it, the big man, 80-78. He has 30 points and 14 boards. The Jazz missed a last-second shot to win it, and the Nuggets hold on, win the series 4-3, move on to round 2 to take on the Clippers. The Nuggets won 3 elimination games in a row for the first time ever.
That's the amazing thing about this. This is 3 straight games where it was win or go home. And the resiliency, the mental toughness, and the will to win was on full display for everybody to see. So I couldn't be more proud of our guys in that regard.
It was a good series. Definitely the most fun series I've played in. Respects to Utah Jazz, respects to Donovan. It was a great battle. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless.
Wow. Well, you know what I would like to think, the game being here on Denver7, gave the Nuggets some good luck, and so did sports anchor Nick Rothschild. He had a courtside seat as one of the Nuggets' virtual fans in his Nikola Jokic jersey. Nick providing lots of energy and excitement there for sure. Jamal Murray will hit the shot and watch Nick in the background going crazy. Way to go, Nick. Way to help cheer the Nuggets on to victory.